Sony just announced the A7 V. After 4 years since the Sony A7 IV has been released, we now have a predecessor to what is probably one of the best, if not the best, hybrid cameras on the market for the price point. Now, the question is this going to be a worthy upgrade for those who own the A7 IV? And I currently own the A7 IV, so I can speak to this more directly. But then the other question I'm going to answer today is this a worthy upgrade from an older camera like a DSLR, or maybe you have an APS-C camera and you're trying to get into the full frame mirrorless game? So what we're gonna do here is I have the list of specifications for the Sony A7 V up on screen, and I'm just gonna run through them high level so that way you get a general understanding of what is coming out with this camera. There is still a 33 megapixel partially stacked sensor versus the older sensor that the A7 IV has. This allows for faster readout and lower rolling shutter, which is one of the pain points that the A7 IV has. We have a new Bion Z XR2 processor with a built-in AI unit. This is going to be a major upgrade in subject detection, such as humans, cars, animals, insects, etc. And we are going to have a better dynamic range, which is up to about 16 stops. As far as autofocus is concerned, we get the 759 point phase autofocus, which is about 94% coverage of the entire sensor. We do have faster acquisition and stronger low light performance with autofocus. And we have better subject tracking stability, especially for the cars, wildlife, insects, whatever, because of that AI chip. Which, a note about the AI chip is on most cameras, you will have two separate chips, and then there will be a third chip, which is the AI autofocus chip. But with this camera, they put it all into one chip, which makes this very efficient. And I'll talk a bit more about that later when we talk about battery life and heat management. But this is a piece of information that I learned from Terry Warfield. Sorry if I butchered that. But this is the video I'll link in the description below, where I learned a lot of the more technical, specific information and some of these things that weren't necessarily presented when they announced the new camera. For the shooting speed, this is definitely a huge upgrade as a result of the partially stacked sensor. We have a 30 frames per second blackout-free shooting capability, whereas the Sony A7 IV hits the wall at 10 frames per second on either electronic shutter or mechanical shutter. So this one has 30 frames per second when you're using the E-shutter. There's also a new setting built into the camera itself called pre-capture buffer. So this allows you, when it's turned on, as you are pressing down halfway the shutter button, it's going to take a certain amount of frames that you designate. It could be 5, 10, 15, 20, or 30. And it's going to pre-capture the moment that you're shooting before you actually click the shutter button all the way down. So this is going to be fantastic for those who are doing fast-paced environment shooting like wildlife, sports, motorsports, etc. There's another function in this called Speed Boost, which is built into the pre-capture buffer. I'm not entirely sure of the details on that, but I will say that the pre-capture is allowed up to 1 second of pre-capture as an option. And again, that paired with the 30 frames per second, you're definitely going to get a lot of photos in that 1 second. So that way, if you do accidentally miss a moment, you technically did it because you have that pre-capture option turned on. I think that's a really awesome feature for fast-paced environments like what I mentioned before. On the video side, we do have some upgrades. They're not necessarily groundbreaking. I think this is where the most criticism comes with this camera. So we do still have a 7K oversampled 4K image coming out of this camera, but at 60 frames per second, we are now utilizing the entire sensor, so there's no more crop at 4K 60, and then they introduced 4K 120 for super slow motion, but this is gonna be at the Super 35 or APS-C mode function, which does have that crop. Personally, as a Sony A7 IV user, I don't see an issue with the 4K 60 with the crop. It's just as simple as stepping back a little bit to adjust for the focal length, and the majority of my content is shot in 30 frames per second. So I'm not using 4K 60 unless I'm doing B-roll where I want to slow it down a little bit. With taking video on the A7 IV, heat was a major issue. A lot of cameras were overheating. Personally, mine has never overheated. I don't know if I just got lucky because I do shoot video in this environment where it does get kind of warm in here. And I also have shot video outside, but I never really shot for long periods of time. So maybe I never experienced the overheating issue, but I can easily record up to an hour in my studio and not have any issues. So I don't know if I just got lucky, but for the A7 V, there's no guessing here that they have have significantly improved their heat management on this. Specifically, they did upgrade it to their Sigma graphite heatsink, which I believe is on a different flagship camera. I don't know which one it is, to be honest with you, but the heat dissipation on this camera is significantly better, and it doesn't even have an internal fan, which from some people's perspective, this is going to be the best heat management for this price point and for this type of camera on the market without an internal fan. With Terry's video I mentioned earlier, he did do a test on this where he recorded for over 2 hours in 2 different modes, and the battery actually died and there was no heat warning ever, which brings me to the next part. So for the battery life, because of how efficient this sensor is, with all 3 of those sensors combined into one and the better heat management, the battery actually lasts longer. And it's the same exact battery as the A7 IV. So nothing has changed as far as the battery, but because it's so much more efficient of a camera, you get more battery life out of it, which I think is insane. So shooting over 2 hours straight of 4K 60 footage and your battery dies at that point, but there's no heat warning, I think this is a massive upgrade for those who are looking at this camera for video purposes. Again, all these specifics I don't have access to because I am not one of the creators that got the A7 V hands-on. I'm still very much a smaller channel, so go check out Terry's video because I really like how in-depth he gets on the actual practical use of the camera and doesn't just read off of the spec sheet like I am currently. He actually uses real-world examples and shows you rather than just tells you. For the IBIS, this is another area where there is a slight upgrade. So 5.5 stops for the A7 IV, moving up to 7.5 stops for the A7 V. So you are going to get better handheld stabilized video, and they even have a dynamic stabilization option where it looks like a gimbal is shooting the video, but the difference is that you do get a 30% crop on that footage. So again, if you don't care about the crop, just adjust your distance to whatever it is that you're shooting, then you're going to be just fine. So it's really nice to not have to worry about the gimbal aspect of it, but I personally use a gimbal if I ever do shoot video, and I turn off IBIS for that reason because I'm using a gimbal. So this is a nice upgrade. I don't know if it's, again, groundbreaking. As far as ergonomics, there is an upgrade to the handle. The grip itself is actually a little bit deeper than the A7 IV, but I did see a lot of comments about how people wish they took over the A9 Mark II grip to the A7 V, because a lot of the features in the A7 V are being borrowed from these flagship cameras that Sony has, like the A9 Mark II and the Sony A7R5. So those types of cameras have a little bit better ergonomics, and this one did get a slight upgrade, but it's not that beefy kind of grip that a lot of people enjoy. It's a little bit slimmer and a deeper kind of grip versus the A7 IV. And this is probably the best ergonomic upgrade, which is the screen. So the Sony A7 IV has a flip out articulate screen. The A7 III just had a tilt screen. The A7 V takes both of those and puts them together. And this is also a feature on one of the flagship cameras as well that Sony has. So it's really nice to see them bring that into a more relatively low price point camera like the A7 V. You do still get the dual card slot on this, with one of them being the CF Express Type A cards. So this is not changed. And then on the connectivity side, you do have 2 USB-C options instead of 1 USB-C option and 1 micro USB option. So one of the USB-Cs is designed for power outputs, and then the other one is designed for more like controlling accessories, but you can customize what each one does. So you do have a little bit better options there, which I think this is a nice quality of life update where not a lot of people use micro USBs at all anymore. So having 2 USB-C ports that you can charge through either of them is pretty nice. Okay, so that's all the stuff high level of what the A7 V has to offer. But is it automatically a great upgrade from the A7 IV? And that's what I want to talk about next, because I have owned the A7 IV for over 2 years. And if you haven't seen my long-term review video on it, I'll link it down below as well so you can go watch it, because I think there's a lot of great things about the A7 IV that still make it a great camera. And there's very little things that I've personally disliked about the camera. So personally, right out of the gate, I don't think it's a great upgrade from the A7 IV to the A7 V. And I will explain why. First off, you're still getting the same 33 megapixel resolution in your photos as you are with the A7 IV. The quality improvements that you have on this are incremental, and it is very specific to the user. If you are shooting stills like portraits, landscapes, lifestyle, weddings, stationary cars, there's a lot of still motion in those scenarios. So you're not going to really see a massive improvement in those areas. But if you are somebody who shoots motorsports, wildlife, and sports, you're definitely going to see a lot of nice upgrades in this camera because it is going to have that pre-capture option in the 30 frames per second, e-shutter mode. So this is definitely going to be a nice upgrade for you. You also have faster autofocus and tracking capabilities. You have lower rolling shutter. So as you go back and forth, you're not going to get that Jello-like look to your footage or to your images. And lastly, you do get the really nice heat management. So if you're somebody who is shooting outdoors in inclement weather and you have a lot of heat issues or you're shooting for long periods of time, you're definitely going to be benefiting from this heat management. Personally, I think everybody's going to benefit from the heat management and the longer battery life on this. But more specifically, when we're talking about sports photographers, motorsport, and all those other categories where you're shooting for long periods of time, this is definitely a huge improvement. For those who own the Sony A7 IV, I think you're better off sticking with the camera that you have right now because yes, there are some nice upgrades on it. If you're one of those people that would love to have the screen as like your upgrade where it flips and it tilts and it articulates, it does all these things, sure, I mean, that's fine if you want to go and get it. But I personally think, at least for me, because I just shoot mostly stills with cars, it's going to be a very incremental improvement over what I currently own right now. And the Sony A7 IV is technically a little bit more expensive. It is priced at $28.99, I believe, whereas the Sony A7 IV is normally priced around $24.98. I got mine when it was discounted and it was like $21.98 or something like that. So it's not that much more expensive if you're willing to hold out a little bit longer and maybe sell your A7 IV to upgrade to the A7 V. But unless you're one of those people that have been riddled with heating issues with the A7 IV, I don't think you should upgrade. I think the heating issue, if I was having overheating issues personally, it would probably be worth selling off the A7 IV to buy the A7 V, but I wouldn't own both. Now for those who are coming from the APS-C world, like say the A6400 or the A6700, or even an old DSLR, I think this camera is the camera to get. The A7 V, I mean, not the A7 IV. I think the A7 V is going to be the camera to get because for those people, they're jumping into the full frame mirrorless game. First off, you know, you want to have something that's going to be affordable. Secondly, if you are a content creator like myself where you do stills and videos, I think this is a beast of a hybrid camera. I do think a lot of people give this camera a bad rap because they didn't include something like open gate or 6K. First off, from my personal opinion, I think it's kind of silly. I think that really the only benefit you're going to get from open gate is if you are reframing for vertical content, so you can get a little bit more vertical headroom here. But really all I have to do is step my camera back a little bit in order to get more headroom, and then I can still crop in my 9:16 footage to get the vertical. So like right now as I'm sitting here, this is actually set up to where if I were to take this into vertical mode, I would still get a decent amount of headroom and I would still be centered on my frame, so that way I don't have to worry about it. Open gate wouldn't necessarily improve that for me. So that's something to take into consideration. I know a lot of people are talking bad about it not having open gate because people will even say like the newer iPhone, which this is not the newer iPhone, has open gate. But I think it's just kind of one of those things where they want to cater to people who want to reframe the landscape into vertical content without having to like flip your camera around. But if you're shooting wide enough of a lens and you maybe step back 1 or 2 steps, you're really not going to notice a difference between open gate and shooting 16:9 and flipping it to 9:16. So I think that's kind of silly to be concerned about that. As far as 6K capability is concerned, I can understand where maybe people want to have 6K footage for more professional work and stuff. But this is a hybrid camera, and hybrid cameras are not designed to be perfect in one over the other. They are designed to be good at both. So take that with what you will, but I personally don't see any issues with it. Now back to the APS-C. Sorry about the whole rant here. What you're getting out of this is you're getting a much more modern autofocus system. You're getting the best in the game autofocus system when you go to Sony anyways. You're also getting better video features. You're getting better low light performance, better stabilization, better dynamic range, faster readout, cleaner motion in your footage. And you're going to get better things like bokeh and stuff like that, obviously. And the tracking features that you're getting in this are from flagship cameras. So like you're getting all that for a relatively decent price, for thousands of dollars less than one of the flagship cameras. I came from a DSLR to the Sony A7 IV, and I had a lot of improvements significantly right out of the gate. You're just getting way more when you go from APS-C to full frame. And I think the Sony A7 V is positioned just as well as the A7 IV and the A7 III in the past. It is a very modest priced flagship style camera, because now we can say it's more flagship style because it has attributes from flagship cameras, but you're getting it for less than $3,000 for just the body alone. And I think that's amazing. So if you're jumping from APS-C into the full frame mirrorless game, I think you should heavily consider the A7 V over the competitors, because not only you're going to get all these benefits I just mentioned, but they still use the Sony E-mount lens system. Just the lens selection alone from Sony and even third parties alone is enough to say yes to Sony, because you just have a lot more flexibility and you have a lot more options for lenses. And I know a lot of people will probably say like, oh, well, I like Canon better, or I like Nikon better for whatever reasons, and that's fine. I moved from a Canon and Nikon combo camera setup to just a Sony, and I can do everything with just this one camera. Like, I don't need to worry about anything ever. And I have a wide selection of lenses I can choose from. In fact, the lenses I use currently are third-party lenses from Sigma. I don't own a Sony lens yet, but these lenses have been super nice for me, and they are also a little bit more affordable for me too, which is why I picked them up. So just a quick breakdown here to recap everything that we talked about. For those who own the A7 IV, you should not have to upgrade to the A7 V. The A7 IV is still fantastic for creators who are going to shoot mixed content, photos and video. You're still gonna have great quality with portraits, product, lifestyle, and even YouTube videos like what I'm doing right now. And it's a better price for you right now, because I haven't checked yet, but normally the A7 IV is priced around $2,200 because it's normally on sale. But now that the A7 V is announced and people are going to be buying that, you're probably going to get a pretty sweet deal from retailers or even the secondhand market. And I think you're still going to get really good quality similar to the A7 V. And for a span of 4 years, it's still holding up very well, just like the A7 III has. Because when I went to go get the A7 IV, I actually waited for the A7 IV over the A7 III, but the only reason why I waited was because of the flip out screen and the 422 10-bit footage versus the 420 8-bit I think the A7 III had. So I waited for the A7 IV, and still to this day, I don't need anything else. The A7 V is still going to be better for those who want to do more fast-paced shooting like motorsport, wildlife, sport photography. I've taken my camera to motorsport events multiple times over the last couple of years, and I do still get really good quality photos out of it. I do have to deal with the 10 frames per second limit though when it comes to the photos, so I'm not able to get all the moments that I probably could get, but it still gets the job done. But if you're somebody who wants to do it more professionally, then you want to have a camera that can shoot faster, and the A7 V is going to be a nice entry-level mirrorless camera into that realm. And I say entry-level because the flagship cameras that are out there that are specifically designed for stuff like motorsport are still going to be better, but they're significantly more expensive. So if you want to do mixed content, video and photo, the A7 V is a fantastic option to at least dip your feet into it. And even if you don't do that as a primary thing, but you do it as a secondary thing, it's nice to know that you have that as an option to choose when you go and shoot motorsport. So I'll say it one more time. A7 IV owners, unless you are absolutely desperate for a heating solution and getting out of your camera because it's overheating all the time, you might as well just stick with the A7 IV. If you're having the heating issues, that's on you. I don't know. I don't care what you do with it. I'm just trying to make sure that you're not making an upgrade to a newer camera for the wrong reasons, because I'm looking at this upgrade kind of like iPhones. Like, I still have the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I probably won't upgrade for another couple years because the small incremental changes that have been made in this camera aren't enough to justify the costs of me switching from one camera to the next. If you're somebody who has a APS-C camera or a DSLR, this is definitely the camera to get, the A7 V, because you're gonna get the most modern, future-proof technology out of it. You're gonna get fantastic lifestyle shooting capabilities. The pre-capture is an awesome option, and you're gonna just get the best of both worlds. So I think this is a great camera to upgrade to. Now, if you're short on cash, and you want to save a little bit of money, the A7 IV is still going to be just fine for you to upgrade into from an APS-C camera. But if you want to future-proof it to where you won't have to buy another camera for 5+ years, the A7 V would be the way to go, because the A7 IV is still going to be strong for the next 4 or 5 years, I'm sure, from now. But by that point, it's probably going to start falling off in terms of quality over newer cameras that are going to come out in the future. But the A7 V is going to hold true to itself way longer because it has the newest technology in it. And I'm all about trying to save money for myself, and I want to carry that over to my content here as well. So if you're on the fence of whether or not you should upgrade your camera, maybe just try focusing on upgrading other things first, like your lenses, because I think lenses are going to be the best upgrade you make first before any camera body ever. And just don't get sucked into the hype on any new camera. It doesn't have to be Sony, it could be any other manufacturer out there. If you just get a different lens and slap it on your camera, you're going to notice a significant improvement in quality long before you ever long before you ever upgrade your camera body. I am tripping on my words right now. So I hope this was beneficial for you. Again, I didn't have access to the A7 V. It would have been cool. Maybe in the future, if I get lucky, I can rent one and try it out side by side to see really what the difference is like in person and real use cases. But I really wanted to jump on this and give my own perspective because I don't have any bias. Like I'm not being paid to say anything. I'm not being granted access to anything that nobody has access to. I'm looking at all these videos, all these hype posts on social media, and I'm reading through the specs and I'm thinking to myself, like, the spec sheet versus the hype, it doesn't quite match up the way I thought it would. And I think it's slightly being overhyped in some areas. And then the criticism that's being made about certain upgrades or not, or lack of upgrades, is acceptable to a point. I think there is a little bit too much expectation in areas like the video capability section. I think if I were to be more focused on video work, I would go get the FX3, right? Or if not the FX3, the A7S3, because with a hybrid camera, you're not going to get the best of one world. You're going to get the best of both worlds. So that's just something to take in consideration. If you're more photos focused, get the A7R5. If you're more video focused, get the A7S3 or the FX lineup. I think that's kind of the point here. And Sony is making it very clear that this is a hybrid camera. So you're not going to get things like open gate and hybrid camera. So anyways, rant over. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like down below. Let me know your thoughts too. Like if you have any questions about the A7 IV, watch the video I've made previously or ask me in the comments down below. And if you want to see more content from me in this channel where I'm trying my best to be balanced in terms of like affordability as a creator and making the right upgrades here and there as a photographer, maybe consider subscribing, because I think it would be really awesome to make more content like this, and your guys' support is obviously going to keep me going. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.